Hello and welcome to your Waves and Tides Lab. So let's start by looking at part one, where we are going to be looking at data on waves in the Pacific Ocean. So when you click through on this link, it's going to bring you to what we call the Tuna website, which looks like this. And this is what you're going to see when you first drop in here. Right now it is set to show water temperature and currents. You'll see that this is data for what is off the coast of the Pacific Northwest. What we are going to be looking at are waves and winds. And so your job is going to be to interpret this data, the colors, the arrows, direction of the arrows, and see if there's any connection between the two. So it's going to involve a lot of switching back and forth between the two. And what I would recommend doing is zooming out a bit so you see a little bit more of the Pacific Ocean, because you might see some more patterns on a bigger scale. Okay, part two is also on waves, but this time you are going to be making your own waves. Hopefully you saw the announcement and you found yourself a suitable basin to create your waves. And here are some examples of basins you can use to make them. Essentially, we're going to be pouring a little bit of water in these and then making a wave that travels back and forth across that basin. And so a basin that is longer than it is wide is best, and bigger the basin, typically the better the results. Okay, so when we're actually making our waves, it's going to take a little practice. So look at this video on how to make the proper wave. Okay, so your basin is going to be a little bit different. Your depth of the water is going to be probably a little bit different. But one thing to note is what you are actually timing. So you are going to be recording how long it takes for your wave to go from one end to the other, and then back, and then to the other, and back. So that is what you're actually timing. Out, back, out, back. So you start it when it's leaving this wall, out, back, and then you stop it when it hits here. And so what you're ultimately going to be doing is filling out this table. And so you are going to make your waves. You're going to record that out, back, do it 3 times and take an average. Then you are going to either add a little bit of water or take away a little bit of water and do it again. You get the average. So we're going to do that at 4 different water depths. And you want to be making the waves as best you can uniform for each trial. So try to use the same method, create the same wave. That way, the only thing we're going to be changing is this water depth, and we're going to see the effect of that. Next, you're going to calculate this total distance traveled. Note this is going to be the same for all of your trials because it's going out, back on the same basin. And then from this information, you're going to be able to calculate the speed of those waves. And that's what we're ultimately after. We are looking for the relationship between water depth and the speed of the waves. And so next, what fun is a table if you don't get to plot your data? You have a graph where you are going to see the relationship between water depth and wave speed. That is, if there is a relationship between the two. Now note, you're going to be putting your own units in here. So what you want to do is make sure that, number one, all your data fits on the chart. And number two, that it takes up a good amount of the graph. So you don't have this tiny little chart down here. Okay, and then we have some follow-up questions. And then we start to get looking at tides. And so we are going to be looking at what we call tidal charts. And these record the change in water level as the tide comes in and goes out. And I would recommend either rewatching that last video in the lecture videos um, or reviewing your notes on that section, because we are going to apply what we learned there to this exercise. So what we have are a number of different locations around North America, and then we have a number that is tied to a tidal station. And so let's pick one nearby. Let's go to Cape Disappointment. And I'm going to copy this station ID. And when we click through on this link, it's going to bring us to the NOAA Tide Prediction website that looks like this. So for each of these problems, you want to start here. And so if you put your station ID in, it brings up the tidal station. You click Cape Disappointment, and boom, you get some information about those tides. So it tells you when the high tides are, the low tides are, and you can also plot that data by clicking here on the bottom left. And if you scroll down, you have your tidal chart. And so remember, on our y-axis, this is our water level. On our x-axis, this is time. And then as this line kind of snakes up and down your graph, this is showing how the tides or the sea level is changing over time. Now, the biggest mistake I see on this lab is that we forget to look at how much time is actually represented down here. And so most of these are just going to pop up with 2 days worth of data. So keep that in mind when you are counting high tides and low tides, because you are going to be determining which tidal pattern is at each of these different locations. Okay, so there's a little bit more information that you are going to get from this website. You are going to look at which basin or what type of basin these tidal stations are actually in. So if you close out, get this window out of the way, you can see there's our tidal station for Cape Disappointment. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see where it actually is. And so we are at the mouth of the Columbia River right here. There's our Cape Disappointment. And so this one is in the Columbia River estuary. A lot of these are asking for a much bigger picture. Is it in the Atlantic Ocean? Is it in the Pacific Ocean? Those are acceptable answers. Okay, so let's go back to our lab. So you're going to do this at a variety of stations. And then the last part of the lab, you are going to look at the effect of an inlet. And we're going to look particularly at Cook Inlet near the Gulf of Alaska. And we're going to see how this affects the tides. Side note, this right here is an ocean trench. So we have a subduction zone on site. Unrelated to what we're talking about, but I think it's cool. Okay, so we have 2 different tidal stations. We have the Seldovia tidal station, which is near the entrance to the inlet, and then we have Goose Creek, which is deep inside this inlet. And below it, we have a tidal chart. And now this one is showing a significantly longer period of time. So you can see that is going from January 14th all the way to 29th. And we also see that we have both the data from both tidal stations projected on this same chart. So this way you can easily compare and contrast the two. So you are going to look for similarities and differences between the two, and you're going to figure out what is the effect of inlets, or what effect can they have on the tides themselves. And so you're going to answer these questions below. Okay, so if you are having any trouble with your lab, or if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I am happy to help. Good luck and have fun making your waves.